Hi, this is Heather Botsford. Today I was going to talk about the learning objectives that I posted in Moodle for the week 2 reading assignment. That's Plato's Symposium. So you can see right now I'm in Moodle. So if you scroll down inside of Moodle here on this page, you'll see the learning objectives listed here. This is a page. So if you click on this, these are the things that I expect you to know for this reading assignment. So each week, along with the reading assignment and the activities, I'll also post the learning objectives. So as you're reading, you'll know what you need to make note of and things that are important, things you'll see on the quizzes, on the exams, things I'll ask you to respond to in the other activities. So the first thing is to know who Plato was and why he was important. So if you read the introduction to Plato in our Norton Anthology of World Literature, then you'll know more than enough information that you need to know for this class. You should also make note of what symposium means. So it's a drinking party, but that's the context. So then I want you to kind of understand when it takes place, where it takes place, who attends it, why it happens, and what happens. You'll also find this information in the introduction. So it's interesting that the story is being told about a party that took place in 416 BCE. This is a story, so this happened in the past. The person telling us the story, Apollodorus, the narrator, was not at the party himself, but he's heard about it. So he's telling us what he heard about the story. At the time he's telling us the story, Socrates is already dead. Socrates died in 399 BCE, and so Plato started writing after Socrates' death. So here we have a story that's set in the past, told by somebody who was not even there. It takes place at one of the party members' house. You should know all the names of the people who attend and give the speeches. You should know why it happens. It's a party to celebrate a victory at Agathon's house because he won a play. It's part of the Illusion Mysteries. He wrote a play, and his play was the winning play. Okay, and you also need to know what happens. So these guys get together. They got together the night before, and they drank so much the night before that Araxagoras decides, he's a doctor, and he decides that they shouldn't drink that much again tonight. So instead, they should all give a speech about love, or eros. So the next thing you need to make note of are who are the people that give the 6 speeches. So make sure you write down the names of all the characters. And then as they give their speeches, make sure you summarize each of the 6 speeches. The speeches are important, probably the most important part of this text. They're the body of this text, so make sure you focus on the speeches themselves. So the first speech is by Phaedrus, and he starts off by saying, love is the oldest God. It's ancient. It's before everything else. And he says, for evidence of this, there are no parents to God, to love. It just appears. And he argues love leads to the greater good. And he gives examples from Greek mythology and from literature. The second person to speak is Pausanias, and he gives a long-winded, sort of repetitive speech, but really what he focuses on are trying to decipher what type of love we're talking about in this context, because he argues there are 2 gods of love, 2 Aphrodites. These are based on the heavenly Aphrodite, who comes from Uranus, and the common Aphrodite, who comes from Zeus and Dion. It's a really interesting sort of idea about love, but that's his main point. The third person to speak is Araxagoras. Sorry, I struggle with that word. And he's the one who is a doctor, and it was his idea to talk about love. So he goes into describing love in sort of a scientific way where he's talking about how it leads to harmony and balance, and it's really about humans achieving some type of rhythm with nature. The next person to speak is Aristophanes, and he's probably my favorite of all the speeches. He gives the speech and it's this sort of silly story of the origin of love and where it came from before humans. There were these other beings. I posted in Moodle here in this section a video from Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which was a movie from the 90s, I think. And it's a musical, and one of the songs is based on Aristophanes' story. The song's called The Origin of Love. So you can watch that video, and it has scenes from the movie, but it also has this graphic to kind of describe the story that Aristophanes tells us. So after Aristophanes' speech, Agathon speaks, and he talks about the qualities of love. And he contradicts what Phaedrus says, the first speaker. He says love is not the oldest god. Love is youth. Love is beauty. Love is balanced. It creates harmony. It makes things bloom. It's never violent. It's the opposite of war. It beats Ares. So he's contradicting, but he's also taking in some of the other ideas of what people who have gone before him have said. So love is bigger than one thing. We're starting to get that idea. Finally, the last person to speak is Socrates. So the first thing I wanted you to notice when you're reading the section of Socrates' speech is that we get an example of the Socratic method. So Socrates is known as a teacher who advances his ideas by questioning. So he asks questions, and then from those questions, he's able to draw out the ideas that he wants to make a point about. So we see that actually happen in this text. So Socrates just kind of drills Agathon about what he said. And so then Socrates is able to say what he's going to say about love through the Socratic method. And so Socrates says that, he, like everyone else, really didn't know about love, and he learned about love from his teacher. So just like us, Socrates was young once, and he was misguided, and he misunderstood love. But because of his teacher, Diotima, he was able to understand what love really is. So Socrates' speech is referred to a lot of times as the ladder of love. And so in this speech, he talks about how love allows us to reach an understanding of beauty. So we start out by loving one person. We love that person. We love their body. And then we love that person. And then it advances on. So we go from loving one person to loving people like this, to loving their soul, to loving this idea, to loving this discipline, to loving just knowledge, and then finally just loving beauty itself. So this is referred to as the ladder of love. Some people struggle with this. I found a really nice video, or I think it's nice, on YouTube, and it's a description of this ladder of love that Socrates talks about, that he learned about from his teacher, Diotima. I love this guy. He draws, animates the ideas as he explains them. So that's on Moodle for you also. Okay, so those are the 6 people that speak, give speeches in the symposium, but then there's another really super important character that comes in at the end and interrupts the speech, and his name is Alcibiades. And he comes in, he gives a speech also. He's not invited to the party, he crashes the party, like literally crashes into the party. And he's not invited to give a speech, but he does give a speech about love. And what's interesting is that his speech, he is someone who represents what happens to you when you're in love. So he's a person who is affected by love. Everybody else has been talking about it in this really kind of abstract way. And then bam, Alcibiades arrives and he is in love and he's suffering from love. So it's adding more. It's adding just a little bit more than what we've already said about love. In these 6 speeches, Alcibiades brings in something else, this sort of violent, negative side to love also. Makes it much more interesting. Okay, so finally, the last thing I have here on the learning objectives is you